Book Club Cardigan is a book. It is Moby Dick. It is a behemoth. Let us just hope that it is not my great white whale. Hi, hello, my name is Allie. I'm an independent graphic designer and writer coming to you from just outside Toronto, and this is my channel where I talk about what I'm knitting, how it's going, and what it's costing me. Today I have some updates to show you on the progress of my Book Club Cardigan, which is the saga that continues, as well as some acquisitions for thinking about the future, the world after my Book Club Cardigan, hard as that might currently be for me to imagine existing. Today I'm drinking the Moonlit Mint Tea from Keats & Co. I have an affiliate code with Keats & Co. if you want to try them out and save 10% on your order and also be contributing to the equitable treatment of tuberculosis worldwide. It's entirely treatable. Resources just are not in the right places because, you know, capitalism. So if you want some good tea and a good cause, it's a good option. And today I'm drinking it out of my dog mug, which I just picked up from a little shop in Ottawa that's owned by a friend of my sister's. It's called Milk. It's super cute. They carry lots of cute, like, boutique-y, adorable things, including this dog mug. Big fan. As for what I'm wearing today, this is my Sailor Swift by Veronica Lindbergh. This is a pattern designed to accommodate busts measuring from 31 to 59.5 inches. And I finished this in late September, I believe, of 2024. So I've had it for 1.5, almost 2 years. And in that time, I've worn it 14 times, which is not a ton, but also for a pretty seasonable garment that doesn't feel terrible. If I'm being honest, I would wear it more if the armhole I-cord were not so tight. It's not my favorite fit, but 14 wears factoring in our $55 project cost. That puts me at a current cost per wear of $3.92, which is not terrible. And will hopefully get better this summer. All right, it's time to get into the Book Club Cardigan. For the, how many updates are we on now? How many more are there gonna be? Is this one going to surpass my No Frills cardigan in terms of updates? Do you remember that one? If you've been around on this channel for a long time, that one went on for so long that when it was done, I put out a video that was just a montage of all the project updates across months so that it was just all contained in one project vlog because it truly went on forever and I fear we're giving it a run for its money. But before I get into all the details where we're currently at, let's run through the project stats. I'm working on the Book Club Cardigan. This is a worsted weight pattern by Sari Nordlund designed to accommodate busts from 29.5 to 61 inches, allowing for the recommended positive ease. And this pattern costs €8.90 or about $15 Canadian. Now I'm knitting this not out of worsted weight because I like to make my life difficult. So I'm knitting this out of the DK weight Wensley worsted from La Bien-Aimée. This is in the colorway Coquelicot. This is a 50% Falkland Corriedale, 25% Falkland Merino, 25% Wensleydale base. It is a DK weight, despite the worsted is how it's spun, not the weight. And the main reason that I am doing this to myself and knitting off gauge is for the wonderful, wonderful color. This is the Coquelicot, very, very vivid, saturated red, subtly on the orangey side. And it's so good. It's worth it. It is contributing to the sweater taking forever because if I were knitting this at a worsted weight, it would be knitting up faster, but here we are. I have not remembered to show these in the last few updates, but I do already have the buttons that I'm planning to pair this with. So we have these really nice sort of cool tone blonde tortoise shells that are gonna pair so nicely, I think, with this red. I'm very excited about it. I'm not excited about attaching them. Don't like buttons, don't like buttonholes, but I like it when they're on. So, you know, we win some, we lose some. And if we add up pattern cost, yarn cost, button cost, we are currently at a total project cost of $346 Canadian. So it's a good thing that this is keeping me entertained for months. If this were a really quick knit, that price tag would be more horrifying than it already is. And in terms of sizing, I am knitting the size 5 from the pattern, but because I'm way off gauge, I'm aiming for closer to the size of a 2 or a 3. And I have had to modify, like there are parts where it's like just knit to this length, and obviously I'm knitting way more rows to get to that length, but I'm basing the length off of the length for size 2 or size 3 because that's what I'm actually trying to accomplish in the end result. So I'm having to do a little bit of hopping back and forth between which size I'm paying attention to the directions for, depending on whether it's giving me like a number of stitches to do something for, or if it's giving me a length in inches for the row gauge. So since I last gave an update on this, did I move my progress marker? I believe that last time I had recently joined. This is currently set up to knit sleeves 2 at a time. This is in a very awkward place to try to show you what's going on, but where's my, I believe that last time I had recently joined under the sleeve. Okay, hang on. Here it is, okay? This, you can sort of see, this obviously is the opening. This is where your body goes in. And the under sleeve is like down here, and then this is body that is under the sleeve. Okay, we can sort of see what's going on. So last time I gave an update, I think that I was a little bit below that sleeve join. I don't seem, oh, I totally did. I did move my progress marker. So last time, this is where I was on the body. So I've only knit a little bit more on the body. I was just knitting that until my ball ran out of yarn, because that was sort of my self-imposed. When that happens, you have to stop just peacefully knitting the body. You need to go get some of the unpleasant parts over with. So I did that like 1.5 centimeters maybe, which actually means that I was further down the body last time, I guess, than I was thinking. It means that about this much I had already done under the arm. And after I ran out of my ball of yarn, I was like, okay, we have to go do hard things now. And I had realized that in addition to starting the sleeves, which was the next thing that I was kind of thinking, I really would like to get the sleeves out of the way now, so then I can just knit the body to whatever length using whatever yarn I've got left. Sleeve length is always my top priority. But I realized that I was at the point where I could also knit the pockets. So I went and reviewed the pocket directions, and these were very similar to the pockets that I did in my no frills cardigan. I think the difference was that in the no frills cardigan, I believe you were just knitting, and then you went back after and wove scrap yarn into one row, then you skip a row, and then you weave it into the row above that so that you can cut the row in between and unpick it, and then you have these 2 rows of live stitches that are where you pick up and knit like a little pocket tube into, and then just stitch the end of the pocket shut. So this one was similar, except that the instructions of the pattern actually have you knitting in that waste yarn, like you're sort of doing a provisional, I guess, so that you can take out that yarn and have live stitches that go right on your needle. I wasn't having to like unpick stitches in quite the same way, but it was basically the same method. Like once you have the live stitches back on your needle, it was just knitting this little tube for the pocket, except that you are actually knitting, this is the pocket inside out. You are knitting the chart still onto the inside of the pocket on one side. The other side is just plain stockinette, but because of the way that the pocket sits, if part of the back of the pocket were to peek out at all, it's nice that the chart just keeps going. There's never like a harsh cutoff where if you just catch the pocket from the right angle, you can like see a little bit of stockinette. You know, I really appreciate that it keeps going. That's a really nice detail. And my only qualm at this point is because there's the stitches for the front and the back, and then you kind of pick up at each of the corners to have some fabric at like basically the side of the pocket tube. But right now it's not sitting very flat, and just the way that the chart stitches fall on that, and like there's texture going on, I don't know. So I'm hoping that when I block this pocket, it's gonna sit a lot more flat than it currently does. It also doesn't have working in its advantage, like the body currently stops here and the pocket keeps going to here, so there isn't any body fabric currently sitting on top of it. Just show me how that would smush it down. So right now I'm a little bit like, this seems really bulky, and would it not have been better to have like a patch style, like an afterthought pocket? Because effectively this way you have the layer of the back of the pocket, the layer of the front of the pocket, and the front of the cardigan that lays over that. You have 3 layers, whereas if it was like a patch style pocket, you only have 2 layers of fabric, right? So I'm a little bit concerned that that might seem really bulky, but it doesn't seem bulky on my no frills cardigan. That is a slightly less dense fabric. I don't know, I'm just choosing to trust the process, really hoping that these will prove to be fine. Worst case scenario, I could unravel the pocket back up and basically reknit the pocket, maybe using something thinner for like the side of the pocket that you don't see, the all stockinette side. I don't know, there's possibilities, but right now I'm really just hoping that it will be a non-issue. It also has, this is the front of the pocket, you can see there's a little bit of ribbing that's here, and there's a purl row to help it fold over nice and clean. So I feel like it looks promising, and I'm looking forward to blocking this and seeing like what that really does as far as polishing this up, because I think it has potential to be really wonderful, and it's just not currently living up to that potential, but trust the process. The other interesting thing about working on the pockets was that it was my first experience in this pattern of working the chart in the round, right? Because the whole rest of the cardigan has been knit flat. It's a cardigan, and that did kind of affect how I was mentally tracking what I was doing, because in my last update I had said that I had really gotten to a point with the chart where I didn't need the chart. I didn't need it to know, okay, here's what I have to do in this row. I didn't even need it to track which row I was on. I could just look at my knitting and know exactly what was happening. But that was made a lot easier by the fact that half of the rows were wrong side rows, and all of the cable twists, like anytime anything was changing, that was always happening on a right side row. So just at the interval that things were happening, it was very easy to tell whether I was on the correct right side row for that to be happening or not yet. But working it in the round where every row is a right side row, the difference between is it time yet or is it not time yet is much more subtle because it's split into these much smaller increments. So I was finding with the pocket that I really did need to pay more attention and tracking in some way what row I was working on. So I chose to work these one at a time rather than two at a time like I would always do sleeves. Pockets definitely could also do two at a time, but I was just feeling out of my depths enough with the pocket situation that I was like, okay, I want to focus on one. I want to know that I know what I'm doing. I don't want to be fussed about trying to get it set up correctly two at a time. So I just did one at a time. And because I was only doing one, the rows went so quickly that I was able to keep track of my row by just being like, okay, you're on row one. Okay, row two. Like, you're spending so little time on a row that you're counting so quickly that I didn't really have time to lose track of what row I was on. When it comes to sleeves, I've had to adopt a bit of a different technique, but that worked for me for the pockets, and the pockets took longer than I expected to, just in terms of like, they're not very big. They're actually, like as I was knitting it, they're even smaller in mine than they're supposed to be because the width of them is dictated by the chart, right? It's like these stitches, like this diamond column is what becomes your pocket. So because I'm working this off gauge, my diamond column is narrower than it's intended to be, right? So that means that my pocket is also narrower than it's supposed to be. It's a pretty small pocket in the pattern as intended. Like if I look at the pattern photos, it's not like it's huge, but mine, I was like, this is genuinely so small. Like what would I ever put in this? And basically what I came up with, because I'm like, what am I even trying to make sure fits in here? So my benchmark that I came up with was this will fit a chapstick and it will fit, because based on the width, I was like, okay, I should make sure that this would fit like a credit card sized card, like that I could slip my driver's license or something like that in here. So that sort of became my guiding size principle of the pocket. But like these two pockets took me a weekend. And it's not like it was a weekend of a ton of knitting, but it also wasn't a weekend where I didn't really get to sit down for any long chunks and knit like I did. And just the process of like getting these stitches on my needles and figuring out what I was doing and knitting them both in this like small circumference in the round. And I think it was a 3 needle bind off together at the end. It just took deceptively long. Like I finished the weekend and I was like, huh. Like I guess I got something pretty substantial checked off the list in terms of like pockets done. One less thing to worry about when I get the body finished on this. But I was like, really thought I'd be further along by the end of this weekend. Here we are. And then after the pockets, this sat for a little bit because in between that's basically where I paused to do my knit fix-a-thon. If you missed that video, you can go check that one out after this, of what postponed any further progress on the Book Club Cardigan for a week. But also, there were definitely a couple days before and a couple days after the knit fix-a-thon where, you know, life was sort of busy. I didn't have like, okay, I can knit for 3 hours tonight. I didn't have that. I had time where I could have been knitting if I'd had something easy and ready to go. But this cardigan was at the point of, you need to pick up for sleeves now. And that's just not something I'm gonna do when I have a small amount of time to spend on knitting, because I might not even get all the way through it. And I certainly won't get to the fun part where I get to just knit. So this definitely sat for a few extra days until I had time to really focus on it and get those sleeves picked up. But since then, I have knit like half of a chart repeat of a sleeve. So that's where we're currently at with the sleeves. It's not very far, but also it is the hardest part of them done. And there are decreases in these sleeves, which means that the further I get, the faster they will go. And on the topic of having to really keep track of what row I'm on, I have been making really good use of this row counter that I shared this in my gift guide at the end of last year. This is from Twill and Print. It's this really adorable stitch counter that it's a pin, so it pins onto your whip, and it actually has 2 pins, so it distributes the weight of it really nicely, which is important because like it is big, so it's decently heavy because it is a 2-digit stitch marker. But having that pinned on there just makes it really easy for me to update my row counter and to, I was gonna say remember to do it because it's right there at the start of my row, but I have been known to forget to use row counters even under those circumstances. I'm just bad at remembering to use external tools, but I've been doing a good job with this one, I think in part because I just find it so delightful and cute that I'm excited to get to like do something with it when I get to the start of the round. Right now, let me get this situated the way it actually would be working on it, because it's sort of, the end is popped out of my magic loop setup. So this is my 2 sleeves on the needles 2 at a time. This one was tricky to get the sleeves set up, just to knit magic loop at all, but also 2 at a time. But I say magic loop at all because with magic loop, like you need to be splitting your thing in half, right? But because of where the things fall on these sleeves relative to the beginning of a round, because the beginning of round is under the arm. So at the beginning of the round, you have a bunch of moss stitch, and then you have your cable charted section, and then you have more moss stitch, which means that if you were to do your magic loop and like split your stitches in the place that you typically would, like you would just leave the first half on one needle and put the second half on the second needle. If I did that, that magic loop split would be in the middle of stitches that are having to be like cabling over each other, which obviously is gonna pose problems because they're not on the same needle. So it's gonna be really hard for them to interact in that way. So I had to kind of reconfigure things so that like this yellow stitch marker here, that's the beginning of my round. So you can see it's very much not at the end of the needles. So I basically have it where all of my moss stitch is on one side and all of my charted is on the other side, plus or minus a stitch or 2, because I also find it important in magic loop to make sure that your first stitch after like a join, like where it's split on the 2 separate needles, your first stitch when you move to the other side really needs to be a knit stitch to keep it tight. Otherwise, at least for me, purl stitches tend to end up way too loose when they're done under those circumstances. So had to sort of fudge where exactly the break would be to make sure that each quadrant, I guess, my 4 halves of sleeves all start with a knit stitch. Just doing that one sleeve at a time on magic loop would be pretty fine. Like just once you get to the point where you want to split your needles, you can just pull the other needle out and like rearrange what's on the front, what's on back. It was a bit trickier to set up 2 at a time just because I had to kind of like think all this through. But what I ended up doing to figure this out is, I mean, often the way I just start 2 at a time anyway, which is that I just set them up on 2 separate needles the way that I want them. And once I like how they're set up on those 2 separate needles, then I move one over to the other. I just merge them after. I don't try to get them all set up on the one needle in the first place a lot of the time if I have any sort of uncertainty about how best to do that or how best to rearrange it, particularly if it's anything other than the most obvious way. Like if I'm doing anything weird at all, I would set up this sleeve on its needle, this sleeve on its own needle, and then I just shift this one over onto this one beside this one. So just as little as little spatial reasoning involved as possible. And in terms of picking up stitches for the sleeves, because again, my gauge is way off here, so to figure out how many stitches to pick up, because I think that the pattern just tells you what number of stitches to pick up, and I was like, this is so irrelevant to me because I ended up knitting more rows of armhole depth even than the size 5 in the pattern. Like I just went to the depth that looked to me like it should be the right depth. I ended up knitting it a bit longer. So we're totally off the rails as far as how many stitches that is. So I decided to just calculate how many I should pick up just by looking at my gauge and seeing what is my stitch to row ratio and using that as my pickup rate. So I think that it was 2 to 3. So I picked up 2 out of every 3 stitches to do the armhole, and that seems to have been good. It doesn't look gappy. It doesn't look like there's too much fabric there. I think that was the right move. And I then checked how that stitch count compared to the pattern, and it was very close to, I want to say, size like 8 or something. So it would not have been hard to match that exact number by just throwing in some decreases, but it also, I found, didn't matter just because of the way that the sleeves are done, where you have your chart that's flanked by these 2 moss stitch panels. It doesn't matter if that moss stitch panel is an extra stitch or 2 wide, it does not matter. So I was able to just use the exact number of stitches that I had picked up, and that was perfectly fine. I didn't do any decreases or anything. And then I did need to think a little bit about the decrease rate, because the rates were different for different sizes in the pattern, but also my row gauge is just shorter than the pattern. So if I followed the decrease rate in the pattern, my decrease line, like if this is our sleeve, my decrease is going to end up a lot steeper because those decreases are going to be happening closer together along the length just because of the row gauge being shorter. So I decided to honestly mostly decide what would make my life easiest, as in what is an interval that I would remember to do this in, because the pattern, there was also quite a range in how often to decrease between the different sizes. So I just erred on the side of a bit less frequently, but let's land on the number that is halfway through the rows of the chart, because that's just a very easy point, because most other numbers I could pick, unless they were a factor of the number of rows in the chart, which there aren't that many options that aren't like very close together, it would mean that that decrease is happening on a different row number every time. So I would really have to be like paying a lot of attention to be like, is this when I decrease? Is this when I decrease? So I decided to make it easy, and just halfway through the chart and at the end of the chart, that's when I decrease. Sounds good to me. That's where we're currently at. It's a little bit hard for me to estimate how far through this I am right now because I'm working on sleeves, so I'm working 2 balls at the same time. So I currently have these, I have this whole skein, and I have one other skein that is untouched. So I have 2 whole ones, plus together this is definitely more than 1, so 3 and a bit. I have 7 skeins in total. Will I need all 7 skeins? Unclear, but I do have it. But that means, like, if that's 3.5 balls left, am I only halfway through this? It's not possible. I am enjoying this project in that, like, when I'm sitting down working on it, I do like it. I am just like, how is this taking so long? It's just so much more involved than I'm used to. So I continue to be shocked by the rate at which it does or does not work up, really. But I think that now that I'm onto the sleeves, I have a lot that I can do now before I reach another point of, like, you have to do something very annoying or intensive, such as picking up stitches for sleeves before you can proceed. Like, I get to do the whole sleeves, and then once I'm done the sleeves, I get to resume the body. The only annoying thing that I have left is picking up for the button band. That's not true. Also sewing on buttons. Yeah, I'm grieving that realization all over again in this moment. That's okay. We'll get it done. And it'll be so nice when we're done. So that is where we are currently at with the Book Club Cardigan. Progress. Just not a lot of it. Also, I feel like I should say for the record that due to some conflicts in my usual filming schedule, I'm actually filming this 3 weeks after my last update rather than the usual 2, which makes this progress feel extra sad. Though, again, there was a knit fix-a-thon in the middle. That basically took up a whole week where I did not touch this at all. So it really is just like 2 standard weeks. Things I have to tell myself to carry on. Here's the thing. I really enjoy working on it. I just would enjoy it being closer to done. I just would enjoy progress working up faster. I would enjoy working this at a worsted weight. Perhaps an Aran weight, even. That would be nice. But I made this DK weight bed. Now I must sleep in it. All right, now let's get into some acquisitions and future plans. I think as a coping mechanism with how very long the Book Club Cardigan is taking over my life for, I concluded that it was time to start prepping for my next projects. And this one feels a little bit funny because, why are you coming unrolled? My Laura Dern in Jurassic Park vibe was unraveling. But usually I like to be, picking out and ordering the yarn for my next project while I'm working on the one before it and not super sooner. But because I have some small projects planned, which is sort of outside of my usual realm, and because they're small projects, it's not enough yarn for free shipping, blah, blah, blah. I have allowed myself to do a little more acquiring than usual and prepping for future projects. So the first one that I will show you is my little collection of St. Isgarn Sunday in, I think this is the olive colorway or 9062. So these I mentioned in my spring knitting plans. I want to make my friend Amy Musselburgh hat. Amy's also a knitter. And I was like, hey, is there something that you would like to have that is a knit project that you don't actually want to knit? And she came up with a Musselburgh, and I was like, I loved knitting the Musselburgh I made for my nephew. Fantastic, sign me up. So this is the yarn we landed on. She wants it at a DK weight. She lives in a deeply, deeply cold place in the wintertime. So she was like a multi-layer of DK weight yarn, perfect, sign me up. And she really likes Santa Scarn Sunday. She picked out this color. It'll look great on her because she has red hair. And yeah, so I have this. I've been toying with the idea of casting this on while I have my Book Club cardigan on the needles, for those times where, like when I mentioned the couple days on either end of the Knit Fix-a-thon where I did no knitting because I just didn't want to do the next like annoying part of the knitting. Like if I had this on the needles, that's something I could have worked on at that time. But so far I've not done that, in part because I kind of fear that once I cast this on, I will just become obsessed with it and it will just delay the Book Club cardigan. And I know that the Book Club cardigan is one of those projects where when it gets out of sight, out of mind, it risks feeling really hard. Like I had a hard time after I did put it down over the beginning of this year. I had a really hard time getting back to it, and it turned out to be so much easier than I'd made it out to be. So I just want to avoid putting it down in that same way, and I fear that if I got started on this, it would become my whole life. But also like, okay, so there were a few days where I could have been knitting and I wasn't. Is it the end of the world if I spend some time on other things? I have a lot of interests in things that are important to me, so I don't think that's the end of the world. If I reach a point where I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sick of this, I need a break, this is available to me as my next cast on, which also sort of was part of why I was like, maybe I should go ahead and order that just in case I need like a little eject button, a little emergency exit. We have this on hand. So I ordered these from Galt House of Yarn. These 3 skeins cost me $44.07 Canadian, including tax. Plus, I'm going to say that their share of the shipping was $4. So that brings us to $48.07 Canadian. So yeah, this is waiting for me when either the Book Club cardigan is done or I am just done with it for a little bit. TBD. Another thing that I got in that same order, I picked up the Coco Knits curved cable needles, which it comes in a pack of 2. They're already out of the package, but they look like this. So compare that to my previous cable needle, which is just a hook like this one. So I was curious to test out the shape of them. I have always felt like nothing I've ever used for cabling has been quite ideal, which makes me an ideal candidate, I think, for knitting cables without a cable needle. But I have tried that, and I find it frustrating. I'm sure it would get easier with more practice, but I have just also seen comparisons of the result that you get with versus without, and considering that cables do seem to like pop more and be better defined when you use a cable needle, and that it's not immediately better to do without, like I think I'm just better off sticking with a cable needle, but I am interested in experimenting with different varieties of them and seeing what works. So I have sort of done everything from like just using one of my interchangeable tips as a cable needle to using these, and I'm sort of 2 minds about how these compare to each other, because this one, because of the shape of it, like once your cable stitches are on it, it kind of sits, you know, like this behind or in front of your work, which means that this is a lot of length to like, when it sort of flips in a way you don't want it to, like it sticks out really far, like into your, I found it prone to getting stuck on things in a way that I didn't like. I found it a bit tricky sometimes to like maneuver in my knitting just to keep it out of the way when I was working the stitches that weren't on the cable needle. What I did like about it, because of the shape, is that I could go like this. I could hook it on my necklace or my shirt or whatever, just like stick it there. And next time I'm doing a cable, I know where it is. Because I haven't put it down. I'm like, oh, where'd it go? Is it beside me? Did it fall off the end table? Is it now under me? Am I sitting on it? It's just very easy to keep track of this one. This one does not have the same benefit, right? Because that's not enough of a hook to stay anywhere that I put it like that. So I do have to pay a little bit more attention to where I put it. But I think that I find so far that it's less like intrusive feeling, because when it has cable stitches on it, it's sitting like this, right? Either in front or behind of your work. So I think so far it feels like it kind of sits a little bit more where I want it to. it's not a world of difference. Like, I'm not like, oh my God, I'm so glad I bought this. I'm still kind of sussing out the difference between the two. I'm uncertain. I do miss the fact that I can't just hook it on things, because that does really help. So we'll see which one ends up being my kind of go-to, but I was curious to try these out. The jury's still out. Also in that order, I picked up a couple more skeins of St. Mascarne Sunday, this time in a lavendery purple. So this is the 5012 colorway. This is part of the Petite Knit colorway collection. And this I got for another thing that was in my spring knitting plans. Look at me acting on my spring knitting plans. So this is for the Cat Cowl by Brianna Arlene, and I already had the yarn that I wanted to use with this. So this is the Ginger Twist Studios Ginger's hand-dyed Yakety Yak 4-ply. This is in the colorway Midnight Tinkerbell, which is very cute. And I got this from Amy of the Musselburgh hat that I'm knitting. So this cost me $0, and I have a little bit more of this too. I think there's most of the second skein just already caked up. So I have a decent amount of this. This has been in my stash for a while, and I always felt like it was really pretty. As documented heavily on the channel, I love a variegated yarn where the tone is all very similar. Like, there's not really a lot of contrast in lights and darks, but it's just a difference in hue. So this is pretty accurate for that. But it's just not in a color palette that I tend to wear. And when I was thinking about wanting to make this cat cowl, this is another gift knit, I was thinking, who does wear a lot of purples? My friend, who, if she were a cartoon character, I would put her in a shirt this color. So I feel like this is going to be a really good combo. I think that this hue works really well with the colors in this variegated, but it's also a significantly lighter value than any of the colors in and around this. So it's going to make sure that there's really nice contrast in the color work all throughout. I love variegated yarns in color work, but it's really important that you have enough contrast in terms of the lights and darks so that your color work will actually show and not get all muddied. So I think this should be a perfect pairing for that. I'm really excited to work this one up, even though it's also one where I'm probably gonna feel like it's taking forever, because here's the thing. So this is a sport weight pattern, and this isn't a sport weight yarn, right? This is a fingering. I wanted to use this. And so I was like, okay, well, so my options are either that I modify the pattern to knit it at a fingering weight or to knit it at a DK weight by holding this double. And, I was like, obviously I'll do the version where I knit it double, because then it knits up faster, and it's not like DK is a huge chunky weight. DK is a lovely weight. That'll be perfect. But a very astute commenter pointed out, hey, you said you were knitting this cowl for your friend because she expressed feeling like she needed some sort of scarf thing, but she runs really hot and a scarf feels like too much, and maybe I need a cowl. And if in fact you're knitting this for someone who runs hot, think of the construction of this cowl. Think about the fact that it is knit in a tube similar to the kilometer scarf, that it's just seamed, the two ends are seamed together to create the circle of this cowl. So because it's a tube, you already have 2 layers of your saying DK weight fabric. And consider that because this is trended color work, that effectively adds another layer to each. So basically each half of this cowl is 2 times DK, and then you layer them on top of each other, and we're now at 4 times DK weight. And do you think that perhaps that would be a lot for your friend who runs hot, and you should knit it at a fingering weight, so it ends up being a 4 times fingering and not 4 times DK? And I was like, yeah. Yeah, that's a really great point. I had not considered how having all those floats in the color work would contribute to it being extra thick and extra warm. So I do think that knitting it at fingering weight is correct, unfortunately for me. So I have ordered 2 skeins of this. I got this in the same order as the olive green color from Galt House of Yarn. These cost $29.38 Canadian, including the tax, plus I'm gonna say $4 was their share of shipping. So that puts us at a total of $33.38 Canadian for these. Now, since the pattern costs $8 US or about $11.50 Canadian, that puts our total project cost at $44.88, but that's bearing in mind that half of our yarn is free, because I got this from Amy in her D-stash. These skeins are £23.50, or at least were when she bought it. I think that was a few years ago, so could well be different now, but we're definitely getting a bargain on this one because it included some free D-stash yarn. So I'm super excited to knit this up. I'm really hoping that the tiny fingering weight of it all is going to be counterbalanced by how absolutely compulsive I find stranded color work to be. When I knit my Serendipity, I knit that in 3 weeks. I have never knit a sweater that quickly. I could not stop, particularly when I was on the yoke part. I was obsessed. So I'm really banking on a similar sort of enthusiasm carrying me through this cowl. I think it's gonna be really fun, and I think it's gonna be so cute in these colors, and it's fun, and it's one of the things that I think is fun about gift knits when you're gifting for people who wear different colors than you do. It's just novel to have something that's in different fun colors on your needles that you wouldn't make for yourself because they're not colors that you like to wear. So I'm very excited to work on this one. Honestly, I will see how I feel after the book club is done. There's a possibility that I jump to this one before the Musselburgh if I feel like up to, like if I'm just totally brain crashed out from the Book Club Cardigan and need something really super simple, I'll do the Musselburgh. But if I feel like I have a little bit of brain power and I just need momentum, stranded color work might be what I need. So we will see. But one of the other things, my last acquisition of the day, is also related to this project because I have never knit anything as fine as this is going to be. I have made a few projects that were on fingering weight yarn, but I think every single one of those was fairly open engaged. Not like super duper open, but not the kind of density that I would want for stranded color work. And it's happened more than once recently where I've been like, I feel like I kind of want to go down a needle size to get this fabric to where I want it to be, but I actually don't have a smaller needle size. My smallest needles are 3.25 millimeters. I have the Luca Cypress set, which I adore. They're beautiful, they're perfect, they're wonderful. They go down to 3.25 millimeters. And much to my devastation, you can't even get smaller ones than that as far as I've been able to find in that set. They just don't make them. I've been able to buy individuals. I bought replacements for things I lost, etc. But below 3.25 doesn't seem to exist. So I went looking for alternatives. I've been very happy with my Luca needles, so I landed on the Luca Flights in the 2.5 millimeter because they go down that far in interchangeables. This was one of the things that I found odd, surprising, confusing in trying to shop for a smaller needle was the vast majority of them seemed to be fixed. It seemed to be really hard to find interchangeables that small. And now that these have arrived, I think that I know why. So I ordered these from Knitting Anxiety, which is a online knitting supply place in, I want to say Montreal. I've ordered from them several times. Anytime that I've ordered like spare needles or travel needles or anything like that, it's usually been from them. I carry a ton of the Luca needles and sell them separately. And on the listing for these, I remember being a little bit like, what does this mean? Because so I had been seeing and avoiding shorties needles. I think because often when people are knitting on this small of a needle, it's to knit socks. So there's a lot of shorties available at this size. So I was like, okay, no, these aren't the like 3-inch or whatever they are tips. They are the 5-inch, which is what I want. It says 5 inches, but it also says mini. So what does it mean mini if it is still 5 inches? And there was something in the description about like, please note sizes under this are mini, and something about like what cord they will and won't work with. But I had no idea like what my cords are, what they're called. They're just the cords that came with my needle set. I don't know, we'll see. So these arrived and I realized the base of these is just extra fine, I think, because the base of the needles that I have is probably just bigger than 2.5 millimeters. So these need to have a smaller base, but it means that these will not screw onto my interchangeable cords, which brings us to, I think, why these small ones probably tend to come as fixed and not interchangeable. But now I have to, I guess, hang on, let me confirm that I'm not making this up. That's not gonna fit on here, right? Excuse me while I hold this up to my Book Club Cardigan. No, I'm pretty sure that that will not fit on my cord, and that is what the listing was warning me about. Which I'm now in a dilemma because the reason that I didn't want fixed ones is like, I don't even think I'll be using these needles that often. Everything I have thought of that I would use them for, they've all been different kinds of projects that would all involve different lengths of cords. I have cords of all different lengths. I should just, I want interchangeable ones so that I can use them on whatever length of cord I need at whatever time. Now that we're in this weird position where these need their own separate cord regardless, I'm like, buying multiple lengths of cords for it. Should I have just gotten fixed at a length that will work for this and just get it at a length that I can use it as magic loop on almost anything because it's long enough? Like, in retrospect, it probably would have been better to just order 2.5 millimeters on a really long cord. I think that if I were starting over, that's what I would do. But that's not where we are. We are here with interchangeable needles and no cord. Because now I need to order a cord for it, multiple cords for it. Uncertain. But I'm just like, ugh. I'm just a little bit bummed that these won't fit the cords that I have. Because my whole vision was just this fully interchangeable set, which it seems is not possible at this size. Also, am I going to hate knitting at this size? Like, I don't, on the one hand, I'm like, if you're going to go to the trouble of ordering a cord, order a few sizes. But there's also a possibility that I'm going to hate working with these. They're so small. They're so small. What if I hate it? So I don't really want to invest in a ton of different cords. I don't know. I don't know. Let me know if you have thoughts about this. If you've navigated this ordeal, let me know. How do we knit with 2.5 millimeter needles? Is this going to be awful? Am I really going to like the fabric and then I'm going to have to like try to convince myself to work on these more often because I like the results? I don't know. I don't know. That's a new journey we're going to embark on. After finishing the Book Club Cardigan unprecedentedly slowly because I'm knitting it smaller than it should be, I'm going to knit something else even smaller than it should be on smaller needles than I've ever used before because great ideas. All right, before we get into Off the Needles, I just want to say a huge thank you to those of you who've joined the Patreon since the last video. I have had so much fun writing the little postcards that I get to send out. I love mail. I found the cutest stamps that Canada Post had available to use. Of course I did. Of course, that is my priority. The book club is currently underway for our first ever month. It's not too late if you want to join in. You still have a little bit of time to read that book and join in the discussions later this month. You also get access to videos a little bit early, access to a knitting chat. It's fun. It's a good time. It's like extremely no pressure. It's pay what you want. Every tier gets the same. And if what you want is $0, thank you so much for being here watching. I will continue being here with all the same stuff being available for free that always has. Patreon just has a few little bonus things if you actively want to be like supporting the channel. And I really appreciate it. All right, now let's get into our Off the Needles. First, let's start with a small business shout out. Again, I just want to revisit Milk in Ottawa. It's in the Byward Market area. The owners of the store are so cool. I feel like the number one evidence, I need not show you any more than what their window looked like for the Canadian federal election. Like 10 out of 10 no notes. I feel like that tells you everything you need to know. But they are a super cute boutique that has clothes, cute little gifty things, just like the kind of shop that you would wander by and do a double take and be like, want to pop in there, please? So highly recommend, especially if you're local to the Ottawa area, but even if you're not, they do ship. So open to everybody, Milk shop in Ottawa. And reading, let's get into some reading. Gotta put my tea away. I got business to get into. So first of all, it happened. I've been converted to the cult of Hazelwood. Here's the thing. I knew there was a decent chance that I would like her books. This information had sort of wormed its way into my head over time. I just kind of got the vibe that she would be my vibe. Maybe it helped that we have the same name. But I was a little bit late to the game and there were kind of already multiple books out. And when that happens, I tend to feel a little like, it just feels like in a very similar way that I tend to avoid starting series because I know then I'll want to read the next book and I don't want to get stuck in like, I'm only going to be reading this one series of books for the next however long. I don't like to jump around in the middle of a series. I don't like to be trapped in a series. This is why I avoid series. And I kind of worried that a similar thing would happen where it's like, okay, what book do I even start with? And then once I read one, am I just going to want to read all of them? It was sort of like, which one do I even start with? They all seem very comparable. It's very hard for me to pick one. They all seem well received. There doesn't seem to be like a clear winner. And then a while ago, I was watching Charm City Ewenicorns and they mentioned this book and mentioned that it's actually her YA debut because the rest of her books are geared toward adults. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. There it is. This is my entryway, my gateway drug of Hazelwood because I love YA. And that was an easy way to pick one over the others because it's the one that's different. So I picked this one and I tore through this book. Let me tell you what it's about. Basically a former childhood chess prodigy who walked away from it is sort of thrust back into the world of chess. And wouldn't you know it, this guy who's kind of positioned to be her rival, charming, endearing, we love him. So It was just fun. I really enjoyed the just sort of like low-key sense of humor that's just always running through all the narration, and I just kept wanting to pick it up. It kept sucking me back into it at times throughout my day when I wouldn't usually be reading. So that to me is like key signal of like, I am loving this book. So I think I have to read more Ali Hazelwood now, which is also like, I have a pretty hefty TBR pile right now. I recently cashed in a bunch of my like rewards points for a book gift card. So I bought a good stack. And none of the others are Ali Hazelwood. This was one of them. I picked up one Ali Hazelwood. So I would like to get through more of those before I pick up more Ali Hazelwood, but I will be following her career with great interest now because I have been sucked in. Other thing that I've been reading lately, and this is sort of going to transition us into our next segment, is Before and After the Book Deal. This is a book all about the like publishing process from the writer's perspective, and I was kind of like, okay, now that I've gotten an agent, there's just like this wild development that I still feel that I have not entirely processed. I've been seeing this book pop up online. Internet knows everything. And after probably, what is it, statistically the 7th time you see something? Is that how marketing works? I think so. I was like, you know what, I probably should actually read that to be more prepared for the parts that come next, including like we're very much still within the before the book deal category. Hopefully we someday get to after the book deal, but you know, we're before. And just thinking about what are all the steps of the before that are new from where, because I've been in the same position of like the writing part and the querying part for so long that the parts of it that are like, once you have an agent but you don't have a book deal, like that time span is much less familiar to me. I honestly feel like I didn't learn a ton of new stuff from this. A lot of it I had already learned from Alexa Donne on YouTube, who is the absolute treasure trove of writing information. So that's no knock at all on this book because there was a ton of great info in this. I just already knew most of it thanks to Alexa. So I also think that this was published in 2020, I believe, and just so much has been changing so rapidly. Like I think that even some of the numbers in this book of like what are typical advances and things like that, I think those are a little bit dated already in that they're high, like advances have been dropping. Basically for everybody, if you're not the #1 New York bestseller, like the idea, much like the middle class is shrinking, so is the mid list in the world of books. So there is a little bit of like, what this is telling me is like a low advance I should expect. I think is actually higher than most debut writers should expect. So that's dismal, but you know, I don't think that anyone who is trying to get a novel published is really in it for the money because there is so little and you have to spend so much time making absolutely nothing that, yeah, I don't think you get that far if your primary driver is money. So mine certainly is not, but this was a nice read to sort of wrap my head around all of the things that are coming next in terms of the working with my agent part, going on submission part, but also things that I hope might come in the future. I hope to someday be in the after the book deal category and all of the new trials and tribulations that come along with that, you know, problems to look forward to. But that brings us to our writing segment. First of all, pleased to report that my morning routine is going strong. The one that I described in my recent video about how I've been doing it for like 2 days, but I was pretty sure I'd cracked the code. I maintain that I was correct. I did in fact crack the code. I've been continuing my little routine of reading a little bit of my Shakespeare and Company history and then a little bit of my Kurt Vonnegut's Pity the Reader writing craft book, and then doing about 45 minutes of writing before work in the mornings, and it continues to be fantastic. I've found myself doing it on the weekends, even though I was not requiring that of myself, just because I liked how it started my day. I have found myself procrastinating bedtime less because I was actually looking forward to the first thing I got to do the next day. And that's funny because I have tried other routines where I do something before work that I, you know, ostensibly like more than work to try to have a nice way to start my day. But I kind of found before that if I tried to read before work, I kind of had one of two problems. And this would be assuming I was reading fiction, like a novel, just reading whatever I wanted to be reading about my day. And so either I would be too sleepy first thing in the morning and I would have a hard time kind of like staying awake and not letting the like soothing comfort of the reading just comfort me right back to sleep. Or I would be too into the book and I would not want to put it down when it was work time and it would become a problem. But I think that instead of it being a time that I'm reading fiction, like the fact that I'm using this to read nonfiction that I struggle to read in other contexts, kind of protects against option 2, like I'm never going to be so engrossed in this that I can't put it down. But also I think in terms of not falling asleep, the fact that I am reading small chunks of 2 different things, like it sort of gives me this checklist of relatively quick tasks that I'm moving through at the beginning of the morning, rather than like, well, I have an hour to sit here and read, and throughout that hour I'm gonna get, it sort of keeps things moving at like a faster pace that I think is kind of keeping me engaged and awake. So far so good. It's been really nice to feel like I have that time pre-built into my day dedicated to writing, so if I don't touch it at all the rest of the day, I know that I got something done and my head is still in it. So frankly, I think it's genius. I cracked the code. Also, update on the writing front. I have a call with my agent tomorrow where we're going to talk about actually starting submission. She's going to show me the list of the editors she's going to be submitting my manuscript to. Got to see the pitch that she's going to send them, which it's very like surreal after having worked on this book for so long and like been the only one trying to like pitch it in that whole time. Like everything that has ever been written about this book has been written by me. And so to read someone else's pitch of it as if it's like this thing that really exists separate from me and someone else has read, and not that other people hadn't read it, I had like critique partners and things, but they weren't like producing their own content about it, right? So just seeing a pitch from somebody else is really like, oh my God, it's real. It's really real. And hopefully an editor will like it enough to make it really, really real, and that it can be like sitting back here someday. But yeah, so that's fun and exciting. I mean, the rejection part, no. The fact that it's actually going to be going on submission, and now it has somebody pitching it who actually knows how to pitch things, because pitching a book is a very different craft than writing a book. And I think I'm much better at writing books than at marketing them. So really fun to have someone on my team who actually excels at that, focuses on that. And now we do the part where editors see it. And, presumably I'll say no, because I think statistically that's what will happen. And I will write another book and work on that one with my agent. And then maybe that one will get said no to. Or maybe it'll get a yes. But I'm managing expectations, because I'm very aware of how tough the publishing industry is generally, especially now. Like, I think it's just only getting harder for writers to get published. There's so many people who want to do it. We're in such a big pool. I think that market things are so uncertain that publishers are taking fewer chances on things that they are not positive is going to be a blockbuster. Trends in publishing come and go in terms of what genres are popular. Mine's currently not. I'm sure someday it'll work in my favor. Right now it's not going to. So it's like, who knows? So I am just excited about every new thing that is happening. I'm excited about going on submission. I have no real thoughts or expectations beyond that. Like, that'll be fun. People will see it. If one truly loves it and manages to get it through acquisitions at the publisher, that will feel like no small miracle. And we'll cross that bridge if we get there. In the meantime, it's just really cool that it's going on submission. So wish it luck. It'll need a lot of it. But also, thank you to those of you who signed up for the mailing list in my video where I talked about getting an agent. I posted a link to a mailing list that you can join if you want to get, if there are like meaningful updates on a hypothetical publication journey. That's where you would get them if you want to make sure you don't miss updates. But I truly set that up and was like, it's hilarious how much time I'm spending setting this up, considering that like maybe 2 people will sign up for it. There are 100 people on that list right now. Oh, I'm actually I didn't expect that to make me tear up. Okay. I just, clearly that really means a lot. Like, I was truly shocked that many people cared deeply enough to like go out of your way to like actually navigate to this link and actually put in your email in this box and actually click the confirmation in the email that lands in your inbox saying, are you sure you want to sign up for this? Like, that's just so many steps. That's going so out of your way to care that much about this. And yeah, thank you. My God, if I ever do get a book deal, I'm gonna be a disaster. I can't even talk about this. Anyway, that's my writing update. Okay, let's move on. All right, so that's all that I've got for you today. I would love to know, do you have a great white whale in your knitting? Is there a project that has been haunting you that you've been trying to do and not been able to get done forever? Did you have one of those and you finally did tackle it? What is your Moby Dick, your book club cardigan? Let me know. And thank you so much for coming to knit with me. If you'd like to be here next time, I hope you'll consider subscribing if you haven't already. But if you already have, you're my favorite. And I'll see you next time.